This is Chelsea Willis with RebelSaga.com. We are here today with the legendary Aaron Lopresti, who's worked on such titles as Planet Hulk and Batman. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, it's Sunday, but I'm hanging in there. Getting a little tired, but doing well. Thank you.
How are you liking the convention so far?
This is my first Texas show, and I've just been really impressed with the amount of people through the door. There's a lot of nice people here. It's been really busy. It's been a really good show. I would certainly come back, that's for sure.
And can you tell us how you got started in art? What inspired you to start drawing?
Well, I started drawing like pre-kindergarten. It was something that I just had a natural inclination for, and I would start by, copying Fred Flintstone cartoons, things like that. Even when I was in kindergarten, first grade, I was doing my own little art books, little story books, and I guess even as a kid, my dream was to kind of get into animation and do that type of thing. At about 11 or 12 years old, I discovered comic books and thought, what a great way to do everything that I like doing. Storytelling was something that I always wanted to do. I was into creative writing as much as I was drawing as a kid, and to get to see the heroic adventure and things like that were in comics, that really sort of drew me to them. And so from that point on, at age 11, I said, I'm going to be a comic book artist, and that's sort of what my focus was until I got to be about 18 or 19 in high school, and I started, I was a basketball player in high school, so I had my comic collection hidden in my closet. I didn't want anybody to know I was secretly collecting comics. I didn't want anybody to know I was a geek, and so I got interested in film. I'd been interested in film also as a kid and getting older, but it seemed sort of more of a legitimate expression because comic books, as I got older, started to kind of feel like maybe I'm too mature to do this. As an 18-year-old, we always think you're 10 times more mature than you actually are. And so I ended up long story short, I ended up going to film school at USC. And after I got out of film school, I started kind of missing art and also realizing what a tough road getting into the film industry was going to be. I thought, maybe I should get back and start pursuing art again. And so then after film school, I actually started going back in and pursuing art and comic book art, and got into a commercial art studio in Portland, Oregon after I moved back home, which we all unfortunately always end up doing after college. And so I got a job at a commercial art studio in Portland and sort of learned my craft there, and spent time putting together samples and stuff, and going to San Diego Comic-Con and flying back to New York and trying to get appointments with editors and show my stuff. And I finally broke in by doing a sample Spider-Man story, which I showed to editor Terry Cavanaugh, who was editing at Marvel at the time for Marvel Comics Presents, which was an anthology book they were doing in the mid to late 80s and early 90s. And they had a lot of opportunities for 8-page stories and things like that they were handing out assignments for. So I showed him my Spider-Man sample at San Diego. He liked it enough to say, hey, yeah, I'll give you something sometime. And so I kept calling and trying to follow up, never got anything. I started flying back to New York and staying wherever I could. I'd save up my money, and about every 6 months I'd go back to New York. And I got in really good with made friends with the receptionist there, and she used to sneak me in, even though I didn't have an appointment. And I'd be walking around Marvel offices going, oh, this is so cool. And then if I saw an editor with the door open, I'd knock on the door and go, hey, you want to look at my portfolio? And they're like, how did you get in here, But eventually I found would track Terry Cavanaugh down and bugged him enough that he finally did give me an assignment while I was there. And then I thought I had it made after that, which I really didn't. I turned the assignment in, it was garbage. And I didn't get any more calls, so I had to keep pursuing and pursuing. And this went on for months and a couple of years, and it was just sticking with it and keep doing new samples and trying to improve. And I finally started getting regular work, or semi-regular work at Marvel. And about that time, about 93, the Ultraverse, Malibu, started their line of comics, and I jumped ship over there to do a book called Sludge, which is probably the first book I did that was actually what I would consider somewhat professional looking work. And then, I kind of used that to kind of springboard into the rest of my career.
So if you weren't doing comics and drawing and all of the stuff that you're interested in doing now, what do you think that you would have as a career? What would you be doing?
I would either be a chef, because I love cooking. I made a deal with my wife. I said, when we get married, I said, I'll cook, but you got to do the laundry. So that's pretty much, it's worked out pretty well. Yeah, I would say that. You know, I might have, if I didn't have the artistic ability that I have, I may have tried a little harder to make it in film than I did. Because when I hit that first wall in LA, I was kind of like, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. And I bailed because I had my art that I thought, well, this will be an easier road to get into, and it clearly wasn't. But at the time, I had myself fooled. So I may have stayed, you know, I might be in Hollywood right now banging around still trying to get my first directing job, who knows. But in terms of just regular stuff, I probably would have ended up either being a chiropractor or a chef. So as odd as that sounds.
I noticed that comic goers, they come up here and they ask you all kinds of questions. What is the strangest, most off-the-wall question that you've been asked while you've been here this weekend?
Just this weekend? You know, that's a good question. I don't know that anybody's been asked anything weird. The weirdest question I always get that I think is just stupid. So if you ever come up and see me at a show, don't ask me this. Did you draw this? I'm sitting here with all this artwork and all these prints. My name's up here. Of course I drew it. Who do you think drew it? Why would I be sitting here if I didn't draw this stuff? So that just cracks me up whenever people do that. But I get that quite a bit. Did you draw this? And I just have to laugh. And I sometimes just say, no, I didn't. I stole it all, but I'm selling it, you know. So, but those are generally from people that come to shows and aren't comic book fans, and they're just kind of here for the event to find out what it's all about. But I do find that kind of amusing when I get asked that question. I used to get a lot of strange requests for sketches and commissions at shows, and that's usually where the weird requests and questions come in. I don't usually get questions that knock me back, and I'm kind of like, really? So like I said, this has been a pretty normal show for me. I don't think I've had anybody that I just was like gritting my teeth going, quit asking me dumb questions. It's been really good, and the people here have been really good. So I don't have any at this show, but don't ask me if I drew what's at my table. That's the only thing.
What has been your most requested character? What do people want you to draw whenever they come up and they ask for commissions?
I never get through a show without getting at least 2 Wonder Woman requests. But that's probably my best known work. You know, my 2-year run on Wonder Woman was well received by the fans and still fondly remembered. And so I get those most of the time. Occasionally I'll get a Booster Gold because I did Justice League. But oddly enough, I don't get things like Batman or Superman very often. I usually get asked for female characters, which shouldn't be a big shock to anybody. But would have to be, over the long haul, it would have to be Wonder Woman.
And these guests that come up, a lot of them are aspiring artists, or they want to break into the comic book industry somehow. What advice would you have for them?
Well, I just actually had somebody come up here 5 minutes before you got here and ask the same things. What advice can you give me? And the 2 most important things in illustration at any level, whether it's comics or commercial, is being able to draw anatomy. Facial anatomy, facial structure, and human anatomy are so important. And then having a firm grasp and foundation on handling perspective. You don't have to have artistic ability to draw perspective. It's more of a math type thing. You have to have kind of an analytical mind and how that works. Because I've taught classes where I've had kids that couldn't draw stick figures but could do fantastic buildings and stuff because I taught them how to do perspective, and they learned it and understood how to make it work. So anatomy and perspective are the 2 things you have to have mastery of, or at least a really firm grip on, because that's what you're doing. You're doing figure work, and you're doing it generally in urban settings where you've got buildings or just inside a room, and you have to be able to place that figure within the perspective of that room so it looks natural and it works. So those are the 2 things that, you know, people want to focus on costume design, or I drew this really cool monster or whatever, but being able to draw human anatomy and have a mastery of perspective are probably the two most foundational and important things.
Speaking of drawing backgrounds, maybe you can debunk or support this myth that one of the first things that people work on when they get hired on a project, if they get hired as an intern, like some of the things that they work on is actually backgrounds. Can you tell us if that's true, or have you met interns and what is it that they work on?
A lot of times that's what artists will do. They will, if you get an internship with a pencil artist, more than likely that's what they're going to give you as the backgrounds, and that's because no one likes to draw them. As an artist, 9 times out of 10, there's some guys that are really into tech. You know, all cars and guns and machinery, that's their thing. Most of us are more organic in our leanings, and most people are looking at the figure work and the faces more than they are necessarily the backgrounds. Unless the backgrounds are really bad, that's when somebody takes notice. And so an artist will get an intern to help them out doing the backgrounds or doing the things they hate doing, drawing cars, things like that. For me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, anytime I have to pick up a ruler, it becomes something different. You know, and anytime I'm drawing buildings and stuff, I'm picking up a ruler and I'm figuring out my perspective, and I like to be kind of free-flowing and just kind of draw the figure and draw the people and the weird aliens or things like that. So as an intern, you're always going to get stuck doing the stuff that the artist doesn't like to do. And that could be different for different artists, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be backgrounds in some way, shape, or form. And it's the same thing if you get an internship as an inker or with an inker, they're going to have you ink the backgrounds, because basically that's pulling out a ruler and straight line and stuff, which can be really boring and tedious. Whereas when the figure work, that's where they get to be more artistic and more expressive, so they're going to generally keep that stuff to themselves and then hand over the background inking to the intern. So,
do you have any advice, if you could go back and tell yourself anything, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, especially at a young age, not to be so arrogant and think that I was better than I was. Most people, when they show their portfolios, most young people, when they show their portfolios, they're showing it not because they want to get a critique, they're showing it because they want affirmation for how good they are. And 9 times out of 10, and I will say 99 times out of 100, 999 times out of 1,000, they're not as good as they think they are. And developing an eye that you can understand where you're at and why even someone maybe that you don't like their work, who's a professional, why they're a professional and why you aren't. I would have learned a lot faster in school if I hadn't thought I knew more than my teachers, and if I hadn't thought I was as good as I thought I was when I really wasn't. And I had a hard time breaking into the industry because I wasn't very good, and I was always better than my friends, and I was always better than the people I was around, so your mom's always telling you how great you are and stuff. Well, it doesn't matter what your friends think, and it doesn't matter what your mom thinks. It matters what the editor thinks or how you compare to other artists. And light didn't go on for me until I talked to Michael Golden. I was very fortunate to meet him as I was trying to break in, and he really just basically ripped me apart and told me what was wrong with my stuff, and I respected him. You know, and that's the other thing. For me, it was like I had to hear it from someone that I respected their artwork. It wasn't necessarily, there's people that are better than me, but for whatever reason I didn't like their art or I didn't think it was that great, so I didn't have that respect for them. But I had the respect for him, and so when he ripped me apart, I really went back and started looking at my stuff with a new eye and was able to change it and grow and get my stuff to a level where I could get my first job and then become professional. But it's so easy when you get criticized to sit there and think, oh, that guy doesn't like me, or what does he know, or why is that editor saying that the S on Superman's chest isn't right? Who cares? You know what? If they like your stuff, they'll hire you. If they don't, they're going to criticize your stuff, and you need to understand that the reason they're criticizing is because whatever you're doing or not doing isn't good enough to get their attention. So you have to be willing to go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, I'm not where I need to be, and start working to get there. And a lot of people get discouraged and they quit or they don't listen. And you've got to be able to take that rejection and that discouragement and channel it as motivation to get better.
Is there anything else that you would like to say maybe just to the art world in general or anything like that?
What do you mean, like, do I want to plug, say, an upcoming project or something like that, maybe?
Yes, if you have a project that you're working on, let her rip.
Well, I'm working on Future's End right now at DC, which is a weekly book and features Batman Beyond, so you should check that out. I also have a creator-owned book called Power Cubed that is I'm working on at Dark Horse. It's one of those things I'm doing on my spare time alongside the DC work, which is my full-time gig. So it won't be out until probably this time spring in 2015. But I published a book back in 1999 through Image, one issue called Atomic Toy Box. And it was supposed to be an ongoing series, but the sales in the first issue were okay. Second issue tanked, couldn't do it. So I pulled the plug on it after one issue, and I've had guilt for 14 years that the people that bought that issue, I've left them hanging for 14. Well, Atomic Toy Box has become Power Cubed, and it's coming out. And so those of you who bought that issue and are like, I wonder whatever happened, now you can find out. So I just want people to know that that's coming out from Dark Horse early next year. And, you know, to people that come to the shows, to people that buy my books, to people that buy my artwork, or just read my work and come to get the book signed, thank you. Because I wouldn't be able to do this professionally if I didn't have the support of the readers out there that enjoyed my work.
Okay, thank you. It's been great having you talk with us today here at Rebel Saga. Again, I'm Chelsea, and it has been an honor. Thank you.